Some viewers may find this disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Viewer discretion is advised. Shh.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. It's Wednesday evening. It's the Ben&Grem show, and we're back for another episode. But it's Wednesday, isn't it, Grem?
It is, mate. It is.
But slightly different, isn't it? Because normally we'd do this show on the Monday, but due to various different things going on, obviously we've had to reschedule. So thanks for joining us on the Wednesday night, guys.
Yes, thank you, everybody. It's really appreciated. Thank you.
Right then. So we have some viewers in already. We have Lee. We have. Who else do we have? We have Lee. We have Lee. Nice to see you, Lee. Thank you very much for joining us. Lee has asked a question, Graham, about something rather interesting. And it is something that we were going to bring up this evening. So we will jump to that since we're on the subject. But obviously it's a little bit ahead of where we were at. So no, that's not a problem. That's not a problem because we will go by what the viewers want and the question. So, Graham, would you like to read out the question, or would you like me to take the lead on that one?
Nope.
I'm just getting a picture and a title on my stream. Is this what you mean? I'm not getting no question.
Okay, no, Graham, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, I'm talking about the chat view. So the people that are actually viewing on the live stream. Not a problem, Graham. I can read it. It's just I will just continue on. So Lee has said this. He says, what do you think about the BLM who have replaced the statue in Bristol with the one of their own? As a designer, I thought it was very well executed and worthy of credit. The statue they put up exactly quite cool. Oh, it's actually quite cool. Okay, that's Lee's point on that. Graham?
Well, my point is that I believe it didn't have the necessary permission to be placed up. The mayor of Bristol has actually released a statement saying that the necessary request and requirements were not fulfilled. They did not know that it was going to be erected.
No, fair point. Fair point, Graham. They didn't, and I think the fact is, isn't it, that since the let me just get to the topic here because like I say, it is a bit later on in our script, guys. Where are we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Where are we? Won't be a second, guys. Just doing a little song in my head.
7.
What songs? Oh, 7. Thank you, Graham. Thank you very much,
7
Graham.
songs.
It's 7, number 7. So, Graham, sorry, Lee. As I say, we thank you for bringing that up. It's just a coincidence, actually, that you mention it, that very topic, because it was amongst our topics of discussion. But yeah, it was in the number 7 line of things to do. So, thank you very much. That threw me a little bit, guys. Yes. So, Edward Colston was the original statue, as you may well know. The statue that was in the place of the current and new statue. Interestingly, I think the fact is, 2 wrongs don't make a right, I suppose. Pulling one statue down to put your own in place is a little bit hypocritical, wouldn't you say, Graham? I think, It's the way it's being done. It's the process that they've taken to implement. I mean, myself personally would have been more accepting of the statue if they did fulfill the correct responsibilities in requesting to have it done, filled out the correct paperwork. But no, they decided to, in the early hours of the morning, to erect the statue, and it was done so extremely quickly and involved 2 lorries and like a small crane on one of them, low loaders. I believe there's a video on Channel 4
So it does also look like Channel 4 News had something to do with it as well, but because they happened to be there. The only news station, had happened to be there at the exact point that it was filmed. So did they pay for the statue to be erected? Did they put the necessary organisation into place? Did they arrange and pay for the transport to have that done? There's questions.
Very good question. Very good question indeed. Yes, I totally get where you're coming from there, Graham. We have a few other viewers in, and before I forget, I want to mention June. Thank you, June. Yes, we hadn't forgotten you. I had saw you. The studio lighting, just for your information, guys, is actually quite close to where I'm seated. And so it's putting a bit of glare over the screen. So I'm actually having to almost squint myself to see the comments. But so not to worry, I will get there in the end. Yeah, technology, eh? Still working with it. We're still trying, Graham, aren't we? Yeah, interesting. So the necessary permissions, Lee was saying, necessary permissions, Graham. They didn't really have the necessary permissions, did they?
No, they apparently had none. The mayor released a statement, as I said earlier, to the effect that they had no knowledge that this was being done.
Exactly.
But the issue is now, what do they do? Because where the law enforcement officers have failed from day one to uphold law enforcement within this country, if they go now and take down the statue, everyone knows exactly what will happen. And I think it's going to be enough to push the frustration and anxiety levels of those silent majority to step up. And there's going to be major issues on the street. The police should have upheld law enforcement from day one. They never did.
No, they didn't. They didn't, and that's it. And so they've been caught on the hop, really, on the back foot from the very beginning, haven't they? And I think this is something that we need to be aware of over the whole thing entirely. But yeah, we're starting to get some sort of normality back, I would say. But yeah, certainly I think there has to come an end to taking down one statue to be replaced by another. The statues are there for a reason, as we know. And certainly by going ahead and doing that, by erecting a statue in the place of Edward Colston without permission is outrageous, guys. I mean, you can't do that. Now,
and also without the necessary plaque stating the issue of a lot. Some people won't like this term, but mob rule. At the end of the day, it was mob rule. The police did do nothing; they just stood by, and even in places knelt. When what the hell are you doing? You're meant to be police enforcement, and you're kneeling. That's just another topic that we have discussed before.
We have,
which is unnecessary. It should never ever have to be brought up in discussion.
No, it had. No, you're right, Graham. June says something quite interesting. She says, but Banksy does it. And she's referring, I think, to putting things up without permission. I mean, of course, we know Banksy is a well-known, worldwide renowned artist who has done some fantastic work over the years. No one can dispute, certainly. But of course, we did find, didn't we, Graham, in Dover, we found a Brexit mural, which was fantastic, I would say. No question of that. However, what we have found...
There is a big difference, though, isn't there? There is a big difference between what Banksy places up, Banksy places up, than what the BLM have done. What they've decided to do is as a statement on one side of the issue. What Banksy does is an overall view. It's looking at the bigger picture or the topic, but it's done in a way where it brings in all the sides to have a discussion on more freely and more friendly, with the exception of our Banksy in Dover, of course, because at a certain group of people, no one knows apparently who they were, but the scaffolding company was hired from Deal to place the scaffolding up.
Mm-hmm.
So it possibly was taken down by a few people that did not agree with the referendum result.
Well, yeah, Grem, you raised a point there, because Lisa has said that, actually. It was, as we understand it, to be painted over. Now, whether the scaffolding company did that, or who knows? No one knows. I don't think they do anyway. But if you do know, certainly chuck it in the comment box. We'll all be delighted to hear. Grem, wouldn't we? But Grem, I want to just add about this. I mean, so yeah, politically, I mean, you could say both subjects that we're talking of here are very political. I mean, you've got Brexit, which is, of course, for those who voted and supported Vote Leave in the referendum in 2016. Now, that was iconic, wasn't it, the Brexit moral? And, of course, even with that being put in place, you could say, and there could be an argument for the fact that it was, depending on how you sit, whether you were a Remain voter or a Leave voter, it had kind of an identity for each side, I think.
Yes, it did. It's an overall view. It was the situation. It was what happened on that day. It's what happened, the result, and from that, what Banksy done, he created a discussion of what's next, what's going to happen, what processes are going to develop from this moment in time. It's a fair statement that he's made.
Absolutely, couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely that. But then the sad reality is it's been painted over. So you do find that, you know, eventually someone somewhere will take a umbrage against it, you know, and want it gone. And that's sadly what we've seen with the Brexit mural, which it would have been nice to have seen preserved. But however, we do understand to know, even up till now, that the painting was actually put on a canvas-based wall, which was unsafe. And I myself, actually, for those of you that weren't aware of this, but obviously at the time that the Brexit mural was painted, I was actually a councillor for a particular area in Dover, as you know, may know, Tower Hamlets. And of course I asked the question some of the officers within Dover District Council, and they, and understandably so, they said, well, look, you know, it's been price tagged at something like £1 to £2 million. And there's no way that the council, certainly under any government, could actually protect that.
Warrant paying it.
Warrant, no. Absolutely, Graham. And so the question I put to them wasn't directly, well, look, let's protect this, let's put the price tag, let's insure this, in other words. No, that wasn't quite where I was coming from. But I think it was a case of maybe protecting it from being bought on or otherwise demolished. But again, to do that would have to have meant the council would have had to have bought it. And with the price tag that was set on it, it was just unrealistic, particularly when you've got various number of issues within the local community that need adhering to. It wouldn't be financially viable by a long shot. So that was the end of that. But sadly, it has gone grim. But it does raise the point, doesn't it, about the statues? You know, one coming down, another being put up by the people that wanted the first one down in the first place. It kind of seems like a bit of a kick in the teeth to a lot of people, I think. So I don't know. What do you think about that, Graham? Do you agree with me on that, or?
The action taken was basically just one-sided. There's nothing more you can say on the topic. It was one-sided. The other side did not matter. So they didn't like it, threw the dolly out the pram and got rid.
Well, actually, Graham, there's
within Bristol with regards to the statue that was removed.
Well, good news is, I mean, Lee's made a very good a statement on the subject of the Brexit mural. It hasn't been destroyed. It seems it has been taken away. Now, you could say it's been preserved. Who knows exactly what's happened to it? However, somebody somewhere has it, and it's been put in private ownership somewhere. Somebody has got it, let's say. So we don't know. Maybe more will come out on that in the near to distant future over the next few years. Who knows? But we shall see. Maybe we'll see it prop up again on the 1st of January somewhere.
I don't know if it's the original or if they've just taken a print of it. If you know, like a 3D sort of print, for example. If you can do that. But it's because I can remember when the scaffolding went up, the local reporter has taken some photos and they were definitely painting over what was there. So
Yeah. Well, I remember that happening, Graham. You're right, and I think I asked a couple of questions about it myself, and I was sort of alluded to the fact that it was a protective covering. It wasn't paint as such, not as paint as we know it, but it was a protective film covering of paint that was to preserve it. Now, I don't know how truthful that is. I mean, it sounded like a reliable source at the time, but it's now gone. So yeah, only time will tell on that one, Graham. So thanks, Lee. Thanks for bringing that up. And yeah, although it was our topic number 7 of the evening, we will fly straight back to topic number 1. But before we do, I just want to mention a few people in the chat. Lisa's in. Thank you very much, Lisa. Nice to see you. What has Lisa said? She has said, hello, Ben and Grem. No, that's not. That's Andrew. Hello, Andrew. Sorry. I'll get there in a minute.
Hi, Andrew, mate.
Hello, Ben and Grem. Lisa, she has said... the contractors are protesting against statues. Contradictions, yeah. She says put one up on their own. Yeah, it's about the mural. It's not good, putting up your own statues, when, of course, all the palaver, if you like, was about the very statues that were in place. It kind of defeats the object of understanding.
Yes, exactly. And I was saying earlier about the plaque, and I don't think I've finished the topic. I think I went off it a bit. That there is no plaque there mentioning the what the new statue represents. There's no proper that. I know I mentioned the term mob rule, but it needs to be put there that it was done not within the law, and it needs to be all these people whinge and cry, scream and shout about facts. Well, get the facts in front of that statue then.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised, actually, Ben, if at some point that statue gets actually removed. Well, it won't be by the authorities.
Well, understandably so, as they always say, 2 wrongs don't make a right, but this is where you hope that in a time like this you would see the authorities doing the right thing. And now let's just put an example in place, so if you're Mr. Blogs, okay, and you put a new extension on your house, but you didn't go through the necessary planning permission, you would be instructed to take it down. You'd be instructed by law, by the courts, to remove it if permission hadn't been suffice. So for that reason, you could expect a similar thing to happen to the statue, right? It wasn't put there by permission, and so you can only hope that the local authority in question would have something to say about it. That remains to be seen, I'm sure. And I'm sure if anybody knows of the story, maybe they know a bit more on that, whether actually that there is something being done about that. Because I cannot, for the life of me personally, feel that the local council of the area in Bristol, would allow it, certainly, because they are...
No, they shouldn't. They shouldn't. But they will rush through necessary legislation to make it a priority that it actually remains. It won't get removed.
No.
They will kick up a little bit of a stink in council chambers, in City Hall, etc. And just to make out that we are actually doing something here. No, you're not. You're not doing anything. You are just feeding mob rule. Yeah. End of.
Mob rule. Crazy, isn't it? Right then, so that's I think we've touched on that quite a bit. Thank you very much, guys. Lee has said, though, just last thing on it, he has said that the new statue is an image taken of one of the protesters who was captured in the photo at the original riot. Oh, right. Rightio, then. So we're not talking about a statue, or are we talking about a statue, guys? Have I got this right?
Yes, we are talking about a statue of one of the first that were
right.
Accosted by the police.
It's an image of a statue.
Mm-hmm.
It's a statue of an image, right? That makes sense. Well, that's interesting, Lee. Yeah, it's definitely a political point, though, isn't it? Definitely political. Well, yeah, okay. Well, if anybody's got any other subjects on the matter on the subject, please do pop it in the comments box, or even if you want to do it another way, and your fingers are sore for whatever reason, chopping too much veg, you can, however, contact me and Grem through the phone number, which is the Ben and Grem Show chat phone number, which is 07948 511 608. That's a mobile number, by the way, guys. But if you're a bill payer and you don't want to pay good money to the Ben and Grem Show or Virgin, all right, where the network is, that's fine. Just call, drop us, and we will ring you back, and we'll have you on live on the Ben&Grem show Wednesday evening. So anyway, that's that. We'll get on to subject number 1, Grem.
Yes.
Just remind me, guys, folks, when we get to 7, I wonder if anybody can do this for us, right? So when we get to topic number 6, someone put a little heads up on topic number 7, because I can see us slipping on that. Or slipping over
we
again.
We won't.
He won't.
I'll be going, stop!
He says he won't. No, Graham, I doubt that for a second, that you would allow me to slip over to the topic we've already covered, but we'll see. Topic number 1. Okay, nurses are wearing no masks at COVID-19 super spreading training event led to part closure of Boris Johnson's local hospital. Inquiries find that nurses wearing no masks at COVID-19 super spreading training event led to 2 metre being apart, not being actioned. Boris Johnson's constituency hospital forced to close emergency areas, and investigating has reported of these findings. So yes, that's not good news, Graham, is it? Really?
No, I mean, how ridiculous does it sound? You've got NHS staff going for PPE training, and none of them whatsoever are wearing the necessary protection for that environment, for the distance they're sitting from each other. It's not appropriate. It's really, really not good.
Yeah, interesting.
But who's going to get the blame for this? Who's going to get the blame?
Well,
this one thing cannot be pushed onto the government. It cannot be pushed onto, if you'd like to say, Boris Johnson.
Well,
it has to be on the management of the hospital.
Well, absolutely. There needs to be some inquiries into the institution, doesn't there? Into the area of the issue. I don't think the government can be at full blame for this. I mean, of course, they told everybody what they need to do, and it's down to those to do it. So it brings me on to something about this a little bit later on in the show, but I won't go on to that just yet, because before we talk on this very subject very much further, I want to talk about some news just in, guys, because Lee has just put something up which is a very hot topic, actually, and it has been for the last several weeks to months. Down in the UK, down in Dover, should I say, the southeast, and it's migration. It's illegal immigration, actually. In fact, it's been taking place from Calais, from France into the UK through Dover. But interestingly enough, he makes a point here about this morning. There was a dinghy that was towed in by the UK and French authorities that had nobody on it, no passengers. Now, that's a little bit strange. What's going on there, one would ask. A dinghy was being towed in from the Channel with no passengers. So that leads.
Well, that's probably. They did have 40 or so land in Hastings, wasn't it? As well today. So maybe that's a dinghy that has gone back out to sea and then floated down towards Dover.
Quite possibly. Well, obviously we do know that certainly movement doesn't just consist around Dover and the port of Dover. We do know that certainly places like Dungeness, Dymchurch, Folkestone have also... And
even Deal have had a few entries there.
Exactly, Graham, exactly.
I had to think of the right word then to say.
Graham, you never need to have to think about what you have to say. You never do.
Oh, I do.
It comes easy
I
for
do.
you.
I do.
So that's taken us slightly off topic. But no, thank you, Lee, because that's important news, and actually it is news of the day. It is very hot news, but it does beg the question: what happened to the passengers? You're absolutely right, Lee. What did happen to those passengers? Did they get rescued and brought in? Was this, as you say, Graham, was this a dinghy that was rescued from out to sea and just floated into the channels of the said vessels? Who knows? Who knows? Maybe.
Or maybe the French Navy were actually doing their job and actually took the economic migrants back to French soil, but just left the dinghy floating.
Well, absolutely.
They could actually be doing their job.
Absolutely. I mean, Graham, Andrew makes a very good point as well on the very subject that we raise. And he says, organised human trafficking, no checks, no reporting, the silent scandal that will not stop. Yes, absolutely right, Andrew. Sadly, it won't. And of course, it does appear to be getting worse over time. And as much as the government know about it, enough people have spoken up and enough footage has been produced, actually, to identify the issue. Yet the government are still trying to eradicate the problem. But I mean, on that subject, we have got somebody who's far more clued up about this very subject than myself and our good guy Grem here. And it's a gentleman called Henry Bolton, everybody. Henry Bolton is somebody who worked in border strategy and security. He had worked with international governments across the world. He had also worked with the European Union in certain areas of diplomacy. And in fact, actually, he knows very much about how and what we're involved in when it comes to movement within the United Kingdom and abroad. And he knows certainly the differentiation between illegal immigration and legal immigration. And so, interestingly enough, it would be good to actually maybe to get Grem, wouldn't it, Henry, on the show to maybe talk about this exclusively. But for what I understand, and many of you can pick up on this if you feel you need to, is that we are part of the European Communities Act, which is something that we are enrolled into whilst being members of the European Union. But within that is the Dublin III Agreement, and the Dublin III Agreement is basically, we as a nation, as like other nations that are consigned to the Dublin III Agreement, have an obligation, a duty to bring in those that are in danger at sea. And of course, you can't fault, you could say, the government, i.e. when I say the government, I mean the government agencies such as Border Force, I suppose, or even the French, in doing what is right by the human life, and that is to rescue these individuals. But where it breaks down is, well, actually, a part of the Dublin III Agreement suggests that these people should be taken to the first safest place of safety. So, for example, if those are travelling in from the Mediterranean, then that would said to be Italy, or otherwise from Syria, that would be places like France, or even Turkey, or well, actually they're just outside the EU. But neither here or there to speak of. We've got to say that actually the safest place is, or has been considered, many areas prior to coming to the United Kingdom. So the question that lies is actually the Dublin III Agreement is being manipulated for various different means, and that's where it's fair to say when we leave the European Union on the 1st of January that the government does pull us out of the Dublin III Agreement and actually does implement something a lot more sterner, and that not just only works for us but works for Europe as well. So that will be an interesting subject for another day, and certainly I'm sure Henry, Grem, wouldn't you know that actually maybe we can get him on one day and he can do an exclusive on the very subject.
That would mean a British Bill of Rights to being would incorporate into that, wouldn't it? It would work alongside the necessary legislation to be put in place to protect our borders and waters and fish.
Well, Grem, maybe the fish took them. Maybe the fish took them. Actually, June has said aliens took them. Well, maybe actually they did. You never know. We always hear about the odd story of the UFO, don't we, Grem? We do. Well,
I honestly do hope that nothing untoward has happened to these individuals. I do hope that that's the case.
Well, yeah. At the end of the day, this is where you can understand why it's a very difficult subject to bring up. And as much as it seems now in this day and age that we are now starting to find people being able to have the debate, have the discussion at least, which is good. It's a step in the right direction. We don't forget the moral duty, you could say, of protecting one's life, and that is, of course, of those that are risking their lives, you could say. I mean, as much as it would be said, easy to say, well, actually, why on earth are you putting yourself in that dangerous position? Yes, but on the other hand, well, they are in that position, and so they've got to be looked after. But it's not just that. It's more, I think, the frustration I think mostly that I think people have is that, well, why us? And now I won't say that completely independently, because it's not just us. Other countries are taking a said share. However, it seems strange that as it's been known, is that there are so many coming in daily, and yet they've had to travel so far. Why are these countries not pushing them back? It doesn't make any sense. But anyway, that is another discussion for another day, Grem, because that is slightly off topic. But thanks, guys. I mean, of course, this is what this is about. We have a script, but of course, if you guys come in on the chat and we talk about something that you're itching to speak about, then that's the most important thing. We keep to your.
Well, just finishing on that topic, the only reason I personally feel that these countries that allow the passing through of these individuals do so, because otherwise they would have to add to their budget. And finances are tight in every country. So if you add more people to that specific budget, it means you've got to borrow more money, and that's probably the reason why they're allowing these individuals through.
Indeed. Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, it's going to affect any economy, isn't it? Naturally, a country has a moral obligation and duty to look after those in question, and of course that does mean putting them up in housing of some form, even if it's temporary housing, or otherwise food. They need food and water, and they need, even to some extent, clothing. So there is a cost to the taxpayer or taxpayers, depending on what country they are in. But ultimately, in reality, we need to get to the bottom of this. I mean, it's been going on for decades. It hasn't just been going on for the last few months. It hasn't been going on for weeks. It's been going on for years. And it's not getting any better. In fact, it's getting worse. And it's not good for anybody, not even themselves, actually. It's not. So one would ask the question, well, actually, it's better to look after your own homegrown nation and bring your nation up to a good, healthy living standard than actually to run from it and to desert it, because actually every country can be great if you put your heart and soul into it. Yes, I understand people are moving on for various reasons, otherwise, it could be political reasons, war or otherwise, but not all situations are due to war. It's more so economic migration, and of course we have found that historically in the last 10 to 15 years. There is a lot of economic migration, and that's where we can and should do something about it. Grem, you can't stop them once. Yes, Lee says you can't stop them once they are here, because there are no borders. Once they're in, no, that's right, Grem. That's right. He's right. What he's saying is right. You can't stop them because of the Schengen Agreement. So naturally, once they're into Italy, they're pretty much into Europe. So they can go through.
Well, yes, okay. But they're not actually official citizens of any European country, so I don't understand how that. I need to read up properly on.
Graham, you're right. What you're saying.
They aren't citizens of any European country, so why do they come under that?
Well, absolutely, you're absolutely right, Graham. They aren't, and they need to be if they're travelling. Even through Europe, you have identity cards in Europe, and so under the European Union,
some haven't they got their identity within Italy, and have then moved on through France, etc., and on to us, towards us.
Absolutely, Graham, but this is the point, but even by that, what we do understand to know is if somebody moves into an area that actually they're not permitted to legally, but actually have no documentation to support their position and presence, then actually they have to then go through a rigorous amount of identification checks and general background checks, and with that does cause time issues. Now, months, actually, I think it's fair to say. And with that, by that point then, they, after a certain time frame under the Dublin 3, I think they can then apply for citizenship and so on and so forth. So this is where the complications are, I believe. And that's why I think when we say we need to leave the Dublin 3 agreement in January, when we leave Brexit, and when we leave and get Brexit, should we say, is something I think is or should be a topic of discussion and debate. But it'll be interesting to see what comes of that and just how much information does come of that. I'm going to say now, and I'm going to predict that it's going to be a very quiet subject, and no one will know anything about it, and things will continue on as they are. But I'd hate to be right. I would like to be wrong on that, and let's hope the government do act, because things do need to be done. Graham, any more on the subject? Have you got any more you want to say?
Point two.
So we need point two.
Yeah, point two.
Righto. Well, that's fine. Lisa, actually, okay, we'll go on to point two, Graham, but, just as we do that, somebody comes in with another comment. So, no, Lisa, thank you. And she did say she was off because she had mummy duties to do, and that's fine, Lisa. You go whenever you feel you need to, but thank you for coming back anyway, at least. But, no, she says here, she says smugglers must be raking it in, sorry, that's my... smugglers must be raking it in. Yet again, it is the power of the money which leads lives. You live to work and work to live. Which way? Interesting, Lisa. Well, that's right. Yeah, it motivates people, doesn't it? Money motivates, and even if it means risking life to swim the channel, well, people will do all they can to do what they need to do for a better life. But you ask yourself, and it comes back to the point: is the life that they're leaving that bad? You know, I mean, under an area of war and persecution, yes, I can understand you would want to, but the whole point is, under the asylum law, is to move to the first safest country you come to, which naturally is Italy. Now, sorry, Italy, for keep mentioning you here, but you know, but you are the first international European country that you come to from the external border. So ultimately, you know, it should be your first responsibility to do what's necessary. But once they have found their feet, then you would expect them to move back to the said country they resigned in.
Well, you would expect them to wish to stay there, for one. But the reason why they don't is because Italy have an extremely strict policy to do with benefits, for example. They aren't as generous as we are as a nation, and they stuck to their guns on that. Yeah. I believe that's why they eventually, because I mean, everyone wants the best for their family. Everyone wants the best for their children. So you will go to all the corners of the world to make your family's life better. But there's ways and processes you need to follow. You can do it illegally. It's just not. It's not correct. It's not right, and it's not fair on the nation that they are trying to enter, because, you know, prior being warned that of numbers that are due to come in, then we can put the necessary procedures in place and help to help these people integrate into British society.
Integrate.
Yes, something that word.
Integrate. Integrate. Yeah.
I had to double think.
Integrate. There you go. That's it. Too many gins, Graham. Too many gins.
Lovely job, eh?
Yeah, it is mad, isn't it? Graham, we have another one here. The next safe country is where I would stay, not to travel dangerous paths with which can kill my child. No, absolutely, Lisa. Yeah, she's making the point, you know, but obviously you wouldn't put your child at risk or in danger. I have found out from somebody, actually, that, and you're not going to believe this, guys, and you will only hear it here. You might even hear it elsewhere, but I wouldn't think you'd hear it in the mainstream media. But there has been cases of, over the years, now not particularly around this particular migrant crisis, but in crisis similarly across the world, families have, this is quite bad actually, guys, but families have actually used children to get through situations to benefit their claims. Now that sounds like a bit of a conspiracy, doesn't it? It sounds a bit scandalous what I've just said there, but actually it's happened. And again, I would like to maybe have this conversation with somebody who knows more about the subject, somebody who in particular told me, somebody who had seen this firsthand. And that's really all I can say on the matter at the moment. But let's just say it's gone to the extent of individuals deforming children to use them as a way to get through borders and to get into countries. And so as crazy as that sounds, and Lisa, you're absolutely right, why would you want to put your child at risk under these circumstances? You're absolutely right. Who in their right mind would? It has been known that others have in the past. So they will stop at nothing to get what they need. And that just says just how scary the situation is. It says it all. If you want some more facts and quotes on that, I will find it for you guys. And it won't be at the moment, but it will be later on the show, or maybe actually over the next few days we'll put some information up on the Ben&Grem show about the very article, very subject. But that's if you choose to want to read up on it a little bit further. But it's quite a story. Again, it's not something that the mainstream media will talk about for various reasons. Not that I'm going to go into them. But it's happening. It's happened.
Okay, well, I think we need to move on.
We do, because actually it does. Well, actually, it does bring us to our next conversation, Graham, on the subject of two. And, of course, that does bring me to discuss Lee. Now, Lee has made a very good point about the Chinese owning TikTok. Now, for those of you who don't know what TikTok is, it's this new social media platform where you can do various different things to get yourself out there. from dances to musical things, and you need to check it out if you haven't already.
Exactly. Even Ben&Grem have released a couple of TikTokings.
We have, Graham, haven't we? But there could be a problem, you see, with TikTok, because actually there's been a lot of talk about banning it. Now, it's Chinese owned, actually, it's been told, Lee has said. And he says, what do you think about that and the fact that the UK have decided to ban Huawei 5G? So of course, they're looking to ban, aren't they, TikTok and also 5G. Now, 5G is our very subject, part 2. Or topic number 2, and so it will fall into the subject and the question that you've just mentioned, Lee. What do we think about that? So yeah, it's quite absurd. I think it does seem or appear that the Chinese are getting a bit of a punishment from a lot of people at the moment, from a lot of countries, aren't they? You know, not just over the subject of coronavirus, it seems, but you know, with technology, with their with the
I think the coronavirus situation, it was just the final straw for the West, especially with the USA, which has pushed this banning of Huawei 5G in the UK.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
definitely connected with the USA.
Well, yeah,
we did.
I think so too. What do we think of it though? I mean, I think it's all connected. I certainly would say. I mean, there's been a lot of privacy risks with TikTok. It's been said, children. Particularly have been using the platform, and of course there is some security breaches and risks on it, so it's come to a stage now where the authorities are now starting to look at banning it, which to some would be good news, others dreadful news. Another piece of liberty gone, some would say, but it depends on.
I'm sure something can be placed in its place. I mean, years ago you had like before Facebook, you had a company called Friendster, which is very similar to the Facebook design, but Facebook made it more easier and funny enough, friendlier to use. And they took the lion's share, basically, and Friendster finished off. With Friendster, you could actually have music playing of your favourite song from the moment someone enters your page.
That was MySpace, Gwen, wasn't it? Do you remember that years ago? Do you remember MySpace? You must be old enough to realise and remember MySpace. You used to be able to do that as well. You could literally put a music. It was amazing. I remember it myself. You had a song, your favourite song, you could put up on your Facebook profile, your MySpace profile. Yeah. The moment you go to your profile, the music would play. It was like, oh, you felt
it's cool.
Like a rock star. Do you remember how cool that was? It's nothing now, but it was something then, wasn't it? MySpace was Facebook back then, wasn't it? Really. So where we go, Graham? Before I rudely interrupted you.
No, well, we're on point 2, but. With regards to the British telecoms companies are going to be basically banning, aren't they, the use of all Huawei equipment by 2027?
That's correct, Graham.
That they are going to have it all removed.
By the end of the year, there'll be a government worldwide ban on Huawei technology. They are absolutely taking a stance on this, and so Huawei will be a thing of the past. But all businesses or industries using Huawei will be expected over the next 6 years to wind down their use of Huawei technology, and by, as you say, Graham, 2027 there should be no more Huawei. Well, it was quite good technology, really, but you know, and evidently it was, considering a lot of people were using it. But sadly now it seems, with everything going on, that we are not going to be users of it anymore. Graham.
No, well, my advice to other telephone companies, not to even contemplating joining up with a Chinese-run company, because they are likely to feel the same sort of result. So Samsung, keep away from them. You know, I've got to move on to a new phone. I'm with Huawei. I'm with that. I mean, I have to move on to a new phone now.
Graham, you said Samsung. No, we mustn't get confused. They're okay, I think. Samsung.
Yes, but what China likes buying into shares to companies.
Well, true.
China has a lot of shares in this country.
Well, yeah, Samsung is, from that neck of the woods. I guess you're right. I mean, that could be the next one. But no, certainly it's a bit of a concern. Lisa says, she says, I have a Huawei phone. Well, actually, Lisa, so do I, or did, certainly recently. I know a lot of people have got, like, your technology such as tablets from Huawei, and also mobile phone technology. And yeah, But you got 6 years, Lisa. You got 6 years, and I can't imagine that it's going to. I mean, give you huge credit if you find in 6 years' time you still got the same phone. Then good on you, because how many times do you change your phone? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you have your phone a few years, don't you? A new phone comes out, and you'll get a new phone. But 6 years, so you might not even realise it. But by the time it dies and you get another phone, people have forgotten about Huawei. I'm sure they might not even remember it within some years after that. Who knows? They might remember the story if you're old enough. Same here, Grem. Lisa says, yeah. Same there, Graham. Lisa says same there.
Oh, so we have to find a new phone for myself, a new company. I'm not going back to iPhone. You just pay for the tag. They can stick that where the sun don't shine. I'm not interested in an iPhone. I'm not paying £1,400 just for a flaming iPhone. No, I don't want to know. Anyway, shall we move on to point 4?
She had, Lisa says she has, well, we can do, Graham, and we will do very, very quickly, but just to mention, Lisa has said that she had a Samsung phone for 5 years. That's good going, that. I think we probably had a phone that long at one point or another in time, haven't we? But yeah, I think I can
remember one Samsung phone. I had a Samsung phone once, many years ago, and I broke the screen to it. Because the vibration mode on it was that fierce. It just rolled off the table and hit the floor.
Yes, it did. I remember, Graham. Yes, it was quite fierce. I think they've toned it down over the years, maybe because of battery life. I mean, everything's about battery now, isn't it? You're getting phones now that 5,000 milliamp hours and 6,000 milliamp hours. I mean, that's massive movement in respect of battery life in comparison to some of the batteries we used to have in certain older handsets. Graham, yeah.
It's an odd shape as well. The phone was the right odd shape, but I don't believe, it's not anywhere near 9 o'clock, so we'll move on.
We will indeed. Topic number 3. I like that, Graham. That was good timing, wasn't it? Right, so topic number 3. Second coming wave of coronavirus is said to kill up to 120,000 people in the UK, twice as many as the current one, British scientists have warned. It says the death toll from the second wave of COVID-19 could reach 120,000. A group of 37 scientists from the British Academy of Medical Science have warned. Now, it depends on who you speak to, and it depends on what you believe and what you don't believe. But what I do understand at the minute, Graham, is there has been suggestion that we would have a second wave, because some would say that we've got back to a said normal too quickly. And Graham, what's your take on this? I mean, I'll tell you what I think in a moment. And guys, please, if you have an opinion on this, come in on the chat. But Graham, what do you think about this, firstly?
Well, I don't believe we can really take the figure as gospel. We need to take it with a pinch of salt, because most of these figures are never upheld. They're either more than what they're stated or a hell of a lot less. There could be a high probability that the likelihood of a second phase of this pandemic will maybe mount to less than 100,000. I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, Graham, I was going to say you're probably right there as well. I would be very surprised that we would reach maybe the figures that we had previously. I do back what Lisa has said. Lisa has said in the chat, she said, my quote is, people shouldn't live in fear. No, absolutely, I agree with you, Lisa. I think people shouldn't live in fear. As much as I think people should still be aware, I do not believe they should live in fear. We can't stop living our lives. We've got to start at some stage doing what is considered normal in our lives, simply because the economy is crying out for it. There is a video on this. And I'm not sure whether I'm actually meant to show you this right now, or if I'm meant to show you this in a little while, but actually neither will harm. But I do think this is an interesting video, guys, and I will show you shortly. But it's about America. and also the UK, or should we say Europe. Now, Europe has been defined as the European Union in this particular video, so we'll talk the member state countries, the 27 member state countries. So let's just take Europe as a collective. It's called the European Union, and US. And so what it is, it's a comparison as to from the start of the pandemic till current time of the peaks and drops of the whole scenario. Grem, shall we flood over to the video right now? Shall we let the viewers see this? Because it might just help us along the way as well about any further points on the matter, because it's an interesting video. Before we talk any further, enjoy, ladies and gentlemen.
Live from the world headquarters of RT America in our nation's capital, this is the news with Rick Sanchez.
And hi again, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez, and I want to welcome all of you who are watching us all over the world, including those of you who are watching us on your mobile device using the portable TV app. Once again, the United States of America has set a new record. In fact, it happened yesterday when we surpassed 59,000 COVID-19 cases in just one day. 59,000. By the way, that is in no way an outlier. It's actually a verifiable trend, because we have in fact now set and then broken that record 5 times. Listen to this, 5 times out of the last 9 days. In fact, it's safe to say that when it comes to coronavirus cases, we here in the United States, we are clearly in a league of our own. Take a look at this chart. See that chart right there? What it does is it compares the caseload, that's the red line in the United States, to the blue line in Europe. And I want to show you a couple of things. There's the peak for Europe. You see that right there? That's when they started to take some measures to try and create lockdowns, for example. Ours came here in the United States just a little bit afterward. What's fascinating is that as their measures went down, you can see that they pretty much broke the curve, right? They evened the curve, and it continues all the way to this day because they're at 4,000 a day in Europe. And it's just now, right here, that they're starting to finally make decisions to open things up again. We here in the United States did things differently. For example, right there toward the end of April, the beginning of May, that's where Texas and Florida enacted their lockdowns. But both in Texas and Florida, right around here, they got rid of the lockdowns and opened things up again. And by opening things up, you're going to see exactly what happens. Obviously, it took a couple of weeks for people to really start getting out, then another couple of weeks for the caseload to actually be accumulated, which is right around there. And that's how you can see where this starts going up to where it is right now at 59,000 cases a day. Remarkable. And that's the difference. That's the differentiator, explaining it as simple as you can. So what's happening now? Well, you got it. Get ready for some new shutdowns. Believe it or not, in places like Florida and Texas, businesses like bars and restaurants and events and gatherings are now being either shut down or limited again. Why? Simple, really. The coronavirus does not travel, right? It can't travel by itself. It doesn't have legs. It's a virus. But we do. So when we began traveling again, going to different places, so did the virus. That could be mitigated by masks, for example, but many Americans, following the White House's lead, have chosen not to wear masks. So who's in charge? Well, here's where it gets even more confusing in terms of what's going on in our country right now. Mayors in cities around the country have been pushing for stricter measures, but many governors in different states have done just the opposite. So you have the president saying one thing, the governors and the mayors saying something else, often conflictive. And as for the CDC guidelines, do you know what they are? So what we have is massive confusion and frustration. And that is taking its toll on everyday people, both mentally and physically and economically. Yes, today, for the 16th month in a row, more than 1 million Americans filed for unemployment. We're going to break all of this down for you right here as we begin to, drill down on where we seem to be and where we seem to be headed with this pandemic here on the news with Rick Sanchez, where we believe it really is time to do news again. All right. right, here now is a list of the questions we think you'll be asking tomorrow. Can the United States re-flatten its COVID curve? The COVID blues hits Serbia, but why the street violence there? We'll take you there. And what's it like to travel amid this COVID surge? We begin, though, with the re-lockdowns that we've been talking about. Yes, it may be happening again in the United States. It's a foregone conclusion, and nobody likes the idea, but it may be our new reality, right? But interestingly enough, we're not starting in the United States. We're going to start with global coverage, with a global perspective from Serbia. Take a look at this. Look at this. These are riots on the streets of Belgrade, where citizens suddenly became angry after apparently hearing that their president was going to reinstitute a lockdown of their economy and mandate stay-at-home orders again. Here's our T correspondent Alex Mihailovich picking up the story from here.
2 nights of this, sparked by strict coronavirus measures. With a second wave of confirmed infections plaguing Serbia, on Tuesday, the country's president, Aleksandar Vučić, made this announcement.
Starting from tomorrow, there will be a ban on any kind of public gatherings, indoor or outdoor, with more than 5 people. Starting from Friday, curfew will be reimposed in Belgrade from Friday till Monday. We will reassess the situation on Monday and make further decisions.
Currently, Serbia's capital, Belgrade, is the worst-hit city in the country, where, across the nation, over a dozen deaths have been reported, along with hundreds of new infections so far this week. While Vučić insists that the measures have been put in place for the protection of citizens, thousands of Serbs have hit the streets to protest against the president's management of the coronavirus crisis.
We're here today because our government is trying for the second time to put us in homes, to impose quarantine, for which it is only its responsibility, because they made all the mistakes that led to the increase of the patients of the coronavirus.
With the pressure on, shortly after the announcement, Vučić retracted the order, but instead of bringing an end to the upheaval, demonstrations have spread to other Serbian cities. With protests growing, many would argue that the current unrest is about more than just a virus, and is a part of an attack against Serbia's current administration that was re-elected just weeks ago. Some even blame outside interference for the spread of the demonstrations, including Serbia's president.
To all those who think they can stomp on Serbia from abroad, I can say one thing. Serbia is a tough nut to crack, much tougher than you think. In order to destroy it just like that, not only will Serbia survive this, it will be stronger and more successful.
Besides economic pressure in recent years, Serbia has endured a number of onslaughts that can be described as foreign interference. In the current situation, there are fingers pointing at Serbia's local media for making things worse. An interesting fact is, a significant part of the Serbian media landscape is controlled by the KKR Global Institute, whose chairman happens to be former CIA director and U.S. General David Petraeus. With COVID-19 and external powers in play, the situation in Serbia can be described as dangerous. While most Serbs watch from the sidelines, the situation in the streets is causing instability and is doing little to help stop the spread of the coronavirus. For news.
Well, there we go, guys. That was a little bit about some of the global issues around coronavirus, and certainly how other nations in particular are suffering with the very virus, and the people, should we say, that also are reaching out to make a stand, if you like. Now, interestingly enough, the Serbian president was up for re-election, and we mentioned this later on within the video, but I'll cut it slightly short. But actually in that video there, the lockdown was actually relieved for the presidential election, for the president to become re-elected. There was a huge suspicion to believe that he would become re-elected, and then once he then became re-elected, he then reissued a lockdown. So it sparked a lot of tension within Serbia. So that's some information for you. That's Russia Today, by the way. That's some footage of Serbia and the people of their upset to a potential second to third, actually, lockdown. Talking of lockdown again, and we will stay on the topic very quickly because we're talking about UK here, Graham, because in the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson has issued a further announcement, and that is that he has suggested that we should be now wearing face mask coverings in areas of all shops. So face masks, there will be potential fines of up to £100 for those that are not wearing facial masks or facial coverings. We've been ordered to cover up, and Michael Gove said wearing masks in shops is good manners, and it will be mandatory. The Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced that it will be the case, and in England, who will refuse will be facing £100 fines. But actually, Graham, we've heard a little bit of response in that from the Met Police. Now, the Met Police, I think they're onto something here, Graham, because the Met Police have said, and they've issued a statement in response, and they've said that they are slamming the United Kingdom government, UK government, COVID-19 face mask plans, and they've deemed it impossible to enforce. It says the plans... Right, it says the chair of London's Met Police Federation has hit out at the mandatory guidelines in shops for wearing of facial masks, insisting that it's farcical and that officers may end up driving around the capital looking for offenders, which is obviously police time and money. And of course, that is a good point there, Graham, isn't it? I mean, as much as one would hope that actually people would just do right by the request of the government, you're going to find... Now, it raises a couple of debates. It's going to find that people are either going to maybe do more shopping online to avoid having to go to shops, which in effect is going to jeopardise shop markets, or are we going to see, people taking the risks and police having to police, which is then taking away the efforts of policing in areas that we need them the most? Graham, what's your take on it?
I did have a take on it. I've lost my train of thought. I am so sorry, guys. Ben, carry on a minute and I will try and jump back in.
No, please do. Please do, Graham. Treat me like a carp on the end of your rod, all right? Now, the moment you want to reel me in, I'm hanging, by the way, all right? So I'm on that hook, all right? And I'm flapping around. My fins are going crazy, all right? The moment you're happy to bring me in, just pull it, all right?
Yeah.
Just do a little wavy thing for the folks, and then we'll know what you mean. So Lisa says, oh yes, June. She says people have never. Hang on, sorry. Start again. Shall I? People have been warned, and some have ignored it. Yes, absolutely right. You're right, June. People have. People will do what they want at the end of the day. You'll have the good moderates and not so good moderates, unfortunately. But you're absolutely right. Graham,
I'll go now, if that's all right, guys.
So you want that fish back, right? Okay, over to you, Graham.
Yeah, I'm dragging it back in, pulling it in, giving it a good pull.
Hang on a minute. Watch me fins.
Right, cool. Right, okay. All right. Well, the thing is, when the government put this idea into perspective, and before they actually released it into public domain, surely they should have put in place the necessary procedures and the equipment and the individuals that they need to police it, because you can't think that the police are able, as a police enforcement, to be able to do so on their own. It's going to have to be a joint effort of shop owners, mall owners of shopping malls. It will have to be maybe community support officers taking more of a role, maybe employing more in that sector, for example, to help to police that sort of thing, and because how will they be able? I can see the point of the police force. How are they going to be able to police it? It's difficult because they've also had the cutback of police, haven't they? And so far, those police numbers haven't really been built up, have they? Since the 20,000 was cut back, so you've got like the issue there with the lack of police numbers. You've also got the issue to do with, sorry to bring this back up again, Black Lives Matter and the way the police have handled that, which is totally atrocious, not enforcing the law in the first place. And so if they were to apprehend someone for not wearing a mask, you know where it's likely to go, the issues that they're going to get. So maybe that's part of the reason why they are also saying that they don't feel they can cope with it. So it's that there, plus the fact they haven't got the numbers to be able to do so. I mean, to police, is it 66 million, 68 million people, or some children up to the age of 11 don't have to wear masks, do they? And other individuals with certain medical health conditions don't have to wear. So at the end of the day, you're talking of probably around about 40 million people. I mean, it's impossible for the police to do it on their own.
But Graham, can I just jump in there very quickly? Because based on what you've just said there, and you raised a very good point about, face coverings and that youngsters are said not to have to wear it. But facial coverings are vital, it's been said to be. But actually, when did it become evident that children couldn't carry the virus? When has it said to become evident?
No, they can carry the virus. They can be a carrier, possible carrier, but they can't contract. They can't actually suffer the results of. If they every life lost to COVID-19 is depressing to even think about, let alone have a discussion on.
Yeah.
But just briefly, there's sadly there has been a very small handful of children that have actually passed because of the pandemic.
Yeah, but I think the point being, though, Graham, is that I think I'm a bit surprised that the government have said that actually, in my opinion, that children shouldn't need to wear face masks, because obviously, as much as they can be carriers, at least they can still potentially give the virus to somebody and somebody of danger, somebody who of an elderly age that actually could be deemed as a high risk. Now, that's not to say that there's children around these people that are in high risk, but I just,
it comes down to the personal care as well, the personal hygiene, hand washing, mainly hand washing. With children, it's difficult to get children to do that sort of thing regularly anyway, let alone us adults. Us adults aren't very great at doing, adhering to that sort of thing. And face masks, you've got to keep it in place. It has to be kept in place. If you take a face mask off, you've already infected it with your hands, unless you've actually washed your hands before and put the sanitizer on and then taken off, then you might be able to quickly put it back on again.
Yeah.
But if you haven't done any of that, then you might as well just throw it in the bin.
Yeah, of course.
And put a new one on.
Well, actually, yes, you're right, Graham. But Lisa makes a very good point. She says about littering. Facial masks in towns and cities and places.
I know, mate. I have seen so many, Lisa. I have seen so many on my travels, especially when I've been on the ice cream van. I've seen so many just thrown on the floor. It's ridiculous.
Talking about
and gloves, plastic, disposable gloves. It's ridiculous.
Oh no! Well, you found a few on your dog walk. Do you remember on your live stream you did?
Yeah. Graham? Oh yes. I done a live when I first started doing live streaming. Yes. Yeah.
But also, Graham, I just want to add as well. Lisa did say also about when we talk about face masks and policing. Interestingly enough, you're going to get a situation where what takes priority. Now, if you're going to get a police officer in an area where a shop exists, and of course they are just about to, let's say, approach somebody who's not wearing a face mask, and then all of a sudden a call comes over on the radio because just a few blocks down there's a shoplifting spree going on, what then becomes a priority? The point is, well, they're both priorities, right? Because it's both will be then deemed to be illegal, right? So you have to wear a face mask. But the point being is, how do we differentiate the seriousness? This is where I think the police are coming from, because of the lack of resources, because of the lack of numbers, Graham, as you said, because of where the police are right now. Is it responsible for the police to be the ones to police it? It's a very difficult subject, really, on that, I think, don't you?
The only way around it, really, I suppose, is that the owners of shops, and it's okay for the likes of Tesco's, Sainsbury's, Morrison's, Aldi's, they have the finances to be able to put 3, 4 or 5 security officers, or maybe even 10, depending on the size of the supermarket. They have that money to be able to do so. But the small shop owners don't have those finances. They can, if they're likely to restrict someone entry because they're not wearing a face mask, and what do they do if that person decides to lash out at them? It's a concern. It's a worry.
It is. No, it is, Graham. Well, that pretty much solves that subject. But thanks, guys, for taking part in that. Yeah, Lisa says also about littering, which we mentioned earlier. I do think she was absolutely right there. The littering is going to be an issue. Topic number 5, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this is a very quick topic, just a statement, really, more than anything, Graham. Football, very quickly. Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, everybody knows Cristiano Ronaldo, so it's not really about football. It's about the fact that he's now due to break a record in football. And the record is this. Now, it says that the information here is that Cristiano Ronaldo is poised to set another record as Juve or Juventus star nears 50 goals in the Premier League La Liga Serie A. It's a remarkable career, you could say, standing one short of 50 goal mark in the Serie A, followed his previous prolific exploits in Spanish La Liga and the English Premier League. So 50 goals, guys, that is a lot of goals for any footballer. So credit to Cristiano Ronaldo for that. And you know what I find more remarkable, Graham, is that Cristiano Ronaldo over recent years has become a lot less selfish on the ball. When I say that, I mean he has been somebody who has provided lots of goals for others, not as just his own. So actually, interestingly, he has become an all-round player over the years of his maturity in the career, and to actually be topped to score 50 goals is a breathtaking, remarkable feat. So congratulations to
him. He has definitely grown up a lot, hasn't he? Definitely grown up a lot from his cockiness back in the day, and the incident that he had on during a World Cup match against a fellow. Manchester United was Manchester United that he played with, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
And he also played for Real Madrid, which is when it references the Spanish La Liga. He played for Real Madrid, and again, a remarkable figure there. But yeah, now he's playing for the team Juventus, which is an Italian football club. Good luck to him. Graham, Lisa says we should put the issue, going back one, she says we should put the issue to the law enforcement. So maybe local authority, law enforcers, to look after the littering of facial masks. Yeah, probably. Or even that, issue fines for those that are deemed to not be wearing face masks in public areas.
I think the only way that can be acted on by the authorities is if they're driving past or walking past and they see someone actually dispose of something out of a car window, or as they're walking just chuck it, then they can deal with it on the spot. But again, there isn't the numbers, is there, of local police officers and police support officers to go about, in numbers of 5 or more, checking local streets. And going looking for people like those litter police that the district council employ, the civil enforcement officers that hover about the Morrison's car park and Asda car park in Dover, just waiting behind parked cars, hiding. In fact, I've seen them, and I know other people have seen them, and I think I've had a conversation with Lisa before, and that she's seen them just pounce on especially the elderly, and slap them with a fine. That's a different topic. But it's difficult, mate, isn't it?
It is difficult, Graham. You're absolutely right. It is. And, all we can do is just do right by what we've been told to do, I suppose. Try and stay out of trouble, obviously, and try not to get a £100 fine. I mean, ultimately, as much as we might feel we're invincible, because, yes, it's going to be difficult for the police to enforce.
Well, it's £50 if you pay it within 7 days, isn't it?
Oh, well, that's
or 14 days. £50.
Well, there you go. Or just wear the mask, Graham, wouldn't you say? That'd be the best.
Exactly.
Graham, I have a very, very interesting topic for many of you. Many of you will, I think, like this one. It's a slightly different one. It's completely off topic, completely off topic, Graham. But it's actually about a very historical happening that happened in the early 80s in Ukraine. Now, there was a place in Ukraine called Pripyat, many of you will probably have come across in history books, that there was a nuclear disaster at a power station which cost a lot of lives, actually. And even now, the area is completely desolate of humanity. There is a 30-kilometre exclusion zone circular around the nuclear site. And over the years, many countries have come together to protect the nuclear reactor 4 of the nuclear power station from becoming equally and continuously dangerous. They've put a steel now cast, you could say, over it, which protects the nuclear from expulging and coming away from the actual material. The ventilation system is in place of the reactor, and the ventilation system is there to obviously keep a moderate temperature, keep air circulating within the casket, could you say.
Yes, yeah.
But interestingly enough, Grem, there has been some findings recently in modern day to do with this nuclear power station, and as much as the people of the world have got control of it, as much as it caused outrage back in the day of the Soviet Union and Soviet governments and so on, and the news around the world about what was true and what wasn't true, and we had some documentaries on TV in the last few years about the very Chernobyl. But interestingly enough, there's a new video that I'm just about to show you guys, and it's a really interesting video, and it's about a potential threat to the power station, to the power plant, to us as humankind. A threat that no one would have anticipated, that could come in line with the current disaster, that could spark a further disaster. Just take a look at this.
On April 26, the Chernobyl disaster turned 34 years old. Despite so much time having passed, the area around the city of Pripyat is still dangerous, not just for living, but also for visiting. The radiation source itself, Chernobyl's reactor number 4, is covered with a steel structure called the New Safe Confinement, and any activity there is prohibited. It would seem that there's no reason to expect trouble, but 2020 is far more insidious than you might think, and this is exactly when something could lead to a new disaster in the exclusion zone. On April 4th, forest fires broke out in the area around the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. You might think this is a common occurrence because it happens periodically elsewhere in the world. However, fire rarely occurs in a radioactive contamination zone. So, what if a really bad event were to take place? What would happen if the fire of 2020, or one like it, was to approach the spent nuclear fuel and the power plant? Let's start with what the Chernobyl accident left behind. The destruction of reactor number 4 was explosive. It was completely destroyed. A huge amount of radioactive material was scattered into the environment. The isotopes of uranium, plutonium, iodine-131, cesium-137, and other elements spread over a wide region. Before the accident, the reactor held about 190 tons of nuclear fuel. According to some estimates, from 5 to 30% of this amount fell into the surrounding environment. This event is considered the largest nuclear accident in history, both in the number of victims and in the severity of the damage. 31 people were exposed to a huge dose of radiation. All of them died from acute radiation sickness soon after. They were right at the center of the catastrophe. The dose of radiation that they likely received varies from 2 to 20 sieverts, which is in no way comparable to everyday exposure. To understand just how much this is, let me give you an example. Residents of regions with increased background radiation receive approximately 0.1 to 0.2 sieverts in 20 years. This is 100 to 200 times less than the exposure at the time of the accident. An additional 4,000 people died from the long-term effects of radiation exposure. A total of more than 200,000 square kilometers, that's more than 77,220 square miles, was contaminated. But the radioactive materials were spread unevenly. Some of it settled on the surface of the Earth. Part fell in the form of radioactive fallout. By the time the accident was over, about 50,000 square meters, that's about 5 538,195 square feet of land were made unusable. This area was no longer suitable for planting crops, trees, or for agriculture of any kind. Hundreds of small towns, cars, and other contaminated items were buried using heavy machinery. An exclusion zone was established for a 30-kilometer or 18.6-mile radius around the nuclear power plant, consisting of an area of 2,600 square kilometers. That's 1,004 square miles. Entry to this zone is prohibited. Despite the amount of time that has passed since the accident, the area remains closed even now. The reason is that some radioactive elements last longer than others. They penetrate deep into the earth and remain dangerous. They don't break down in just a few decades. It takes much more time. For example, the half-life of strontium-90 is approximately 29 years. Americium-241, 432 years. And for plutonium-239, it's 24,110 years. It's hard to imagine such a long wait, don't you think? Perhaps while waiting for this time to pass, humanity will pretty much forget about the existence of the exclusion zone. But back to the events of 2020. First, a fire broke out between two small towns. Then it grew rapidly, eventually destroying 12 towns and a cemetery. The first wave of fire was put out in 10 days. But due to strong winds, the fire began to spread with renewed force, prompting the mobilization of hundreds of people and their equipment in an attempt to extinguish it. As of April 17th, an area of 115 square kilometers, or 44.4 square miles, was affected by the fires. The fire destroyed part of the Red Forest, an area that absorbed a huge share of the radioactive dust during the accident. The high dose of radiation led to the death of trees and to them turning various shades of red and yellow. After the disaster in 1986, the forest was cut down and buried, but soon it grew back. Some areas here are still considered very dangerous. The fire inside the exclusion zone was very difficult to put out. It's unknown how much time and effort will have to be spent if one breaks out again. But the fire was not the only scary thing. Smoke and tar quickly spread to large cities. For several days, the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, experienced one of the highest levels of air pollution. Remember the especially radioactive elements that have been stored in the earth for millennia? Environmentalists admit that the radioactive substances, along with elements from the fire, can be transported for long distances by the wind. Does this mean that the contaminated area has expanded? Perhaps, but it's too early to draw any conclusions. Much worse than that, the fire came close to the outskirts of Pripyat at a distance of about 2 kilometers or 1.24 miles. It was finally in this zone that they managed to quickly put it out. Let's say thanks for the rain. Despite this, the general background radiation has increased. Scientists speculate that in the center of where the fire burned, it's 16.5 times higher than the norm. Should we expect the same terrible consequences from the fire as after the accident at the nuclear power plant itself? You can breathe a sigh of relief. And here's a small spoiler. In the near future, disaster will be avoided, but only in the near future. It's unlikely that a fire could destroy the new sarcophagus that covers the most dangerous area. As I said earlier, it's made of steel. Its melting point is about 1,370 to 1,500 degrees Celsius. That's 2,498 to 2,732 Fahrenheit. The temperature of a forest fire can only reach to between 700 and 900 degrees Celsius. That's between 1,292 and 2,192 Fahrenheit. Pretty hot, you say. However, the forest and the nuclear power plant zone are separated by empty land where only grass grows. Its burning temperature would be an insignificant threat to the steel structure. But buildings are rarely perfect, and this one also has a weak spot: the ventilation system. If it's affected in some way, the filters will begin to eject radioactive micro and nanoparticles with more force. They will then be spread by the wind for hundreds of kilometers or hundreds of miles from the affected area. Although not right away, over time, toxic elements will affect the health of the unlucky people who inhale them. Radioactive elements that take a long time to break down will remain in the body and will destroy tissues and internal organs. The situation looks like a time bomb. Well, it seems like I've described the worst case scenario, but you need to know in advance what to prepare for, right? And now it's time to get back to the subject of the spent nuclear fuel. Unlike the material in existing reactors, this stuff has much higher levels of radioactivity. It seems only logical that it would be more dangerous. However, there's nothing to worry about. The fuel is kept under strong protection. A huge, reinforced concrete structure stores airtight containers made of an alloy of steel and cast iron. It's impenetrable, even if we're talking about fire. Want to know where the fire came from? There are several possible reasons. One is that dry grass caught fire. Another is a short in a power line. A single spark is enough to set everything ablaze. Usually, a fire destroys the whole forest, leaving animals no chance of survival. But as I found out, people suffer no less, especially in the contamination zone of a nuclear power plant. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and click on the bell to be notified about new, interesting videos that are waiting for you ahead.
Well, Ben&Grem, that was a bit of a powerful video, wasn't it? About the Pripyat, the disaster in the 1980s, 1986, I believe, or was it 1983? It might have been 1983. Yeah, the disaster, the nuclear power station, and of course the effects of a fire that could have on the very location. So where we thought we had it contained, yes, although still contained, could pose real threat if certainly a fire was to come in contact, Graham.
Well, yes, it's to do with the ventilation system, isn't it? To keep the area at the necessary temperature, as mentioned earlier. If that gets affected, it's likely to cause a big issue and more releasing of nuclear waste, and the last thing the area needs.
Last thing the area needs, indeed. And yes, you're absolutely right, Lisa. She says Chernobyl. Yes, it's Chernobyl. Very huge topic of the now and of the yesterday. So, Graham, there is one thing, because we're running out of time, guys, and it is that time again, but there is just one more thing that is pertinent, given everything about the coronavirus and everything that's going on. And we heard that actually with coronavirus, that we've heard local lockdowns being potentially significant in areas where the peak, or let's just say confirmed cases, are had. We've heard that Leicester has been locked down as a local area, as said. But there's also another piece of news about Leicester, and it's come from a Conservative MP, and this is how it reads. A Conservative MP says there could be as many as 10,000 victims of modern slavery working in factories in Leicester. His claims comes as a new report estimates there are around 100,000 such victims nationwide. North West Lancashire MP Andrew Brigden has told Sky News on Monday that there has been a systemic failure within the Leicester local authority that has allowed thousands of workers in textile factories across the city to be exploited over many years. Now that's quite worrying. I mean, we've heard that, you know, certain industries in the world, or even in our country, have been under some form of manipulation, whether it's due to wages or unfair handling of certain matters. We get it all the time in some areas, but that's quite a concern, isn't it, Graham? And it comes around about the time, as you say, of when we discussed about Black Lives Matter in the previous episodes, and of course earlier this evening. Has that got anything to do with it, do you think?
Well, it's definitely a very similar sort of situation. Modern day slavery. We shouldn't even be having the topic. We shouldn't even be discussing modern day slavery. It should not be happening. I mean, the whole point of the slave trade back in 1807, I believe the UK were one of the first countries to stop it. Norway was first by a few years, but at that point the UK were actually in the process of getting it through the Parliament, because the parliamentary system and the way Westminster has always worked is very outdated, and it's good in a way because everything is done, everything is spent a certain amount of time on, so it's done correctly. So slavery was abolished back in 1807. Why on earth are we even discussing slavery now? Modern day slavery. It should not be a discussion. It's ridiculous. It's companies that are abusing workers by paying them basically crap money. There's nothing more that can be said on it.
Well, that's 2020 for you, would ask Graham, and a lot's happened this year, hasn't it? Some people have actually said maybe we should consider cancelling 2020, but of course it's still a history, present and past, that we have to conduct. But on the subject of 2020 and on a closing subject, very quick closing subject, guys, something else that has needs of concern, and we're talking about 2020 and all the devastation that's been going on throughout this year. We have heard on Twitter, actually, it's going viral, it's going crazy actually, Twitter. Now, Twitter is a social media platform that many of us use. It has been suggested that squirrels are testing positive for the bubonic plague, and that's been detected in Colorado. An unlucky squirrel from Colorado has tested positive for bubonic plague. Health local officials have said that with the US COVID-19 cases soaring past the 3.3 million mark, news on the classic disease comeback has caused quite a stir. Now, you can imagine, we don't need anything else going on in our world, do we? We've got enough going on with COVID-19. So that kind of wraps up the show, Graham, doesn't it? That has been a huge success for us this evening, and thank you very much, everybody, for joining the stream. Lisa says she's got to go off as well. She's got some parent duties to do. That's great. That's fine. Thank you, Lisa, for getting involved and being part of the show as once again. Graham?
Yes, Lisa and everyone, thank you for taking part in the show and giving us your time. It's really appreciated. And Ben, especially a big thank you to you for helping put the show together. It's appreciated as well, having such an amazing co-host to work alongside. It means a lot. Thank you, mate.
No, thank you. The Ben and Grem show would not exist if it wasn't for you, Graham. Or Ben, to tell you the truth. But no, thank you. It's a joint discussion. It's a joint thing. And without us, it wouldn't happen, right? It would not exist.
Exactly.
But more importantly, without you guys, it wouldn't happen at all. And you've been great tonight, you guys. You've led the way, and we've had great pleasure in delivering the Ben and Grem show for you once again. Sorry, guys, that it had to be Wednesday evening. As I say, it would have been Monday evening, but we will be back normal time on Sunday, next Sunday that is, and that will be at a time of 7:30, and we look forward to seeing you then. From me, it's Ben, and from Grem.
Yeah, and from Grem and from Ben.
Good night.
Yes, thank you very much, guys. Good night, everyone. God bless.
God bless.
Yeah.